As we go to air, George Pell is spending his first night as a free man after 405 days behind bars. In a decision that's created headlines around the world, the High Court today overturned his convictions for sexually abusing 2 choir boys. The High Court of Australia said there were 3 main discrepancies in the prosecution's case that led to it quashing Pell's convictions and ordering verdicts of acquittal. Crime editor Simon Boda begins our coverage.
It just seems not possible. You know, 2 courts have found him guilty and another court turns around and says, hey, you can go home.
This outcome of the court will be received well by some, who will be comforted, it will be distressing for others to hear.
Just after midday, George Pell was driven out of Victoria's Barwon prison, a free man. Australia's High Court deciding jury verdicts on 4 counts of indecent assault and 1 of child sexual assault were unsafe.
Absolute shock first, and then disbelief, and then confusion about the court systems.
Phil Nagel was 9 years old when he was assaulted by a priest.
The Catholic Church, well, they'll always defend the brand. It's a very damaged brand now, as we know, but that's the way they do it. You look at how much money they're throwing behind this Cardinal Pell thing, and every court case.
Look, I really wouldn't want to say anything other than just let the judgment speak for itself.
Long-time Pell supporter, former Prime Minister Tony Abbott.
You've been a strong supporter, though, of Cardinal Pell, haven't you?
Look, that's as it's been and as it will be, but as I said, today is just a day to let the High Court judgment speak for itself.
Do you think it's a correct decision?
Once Australia's most senior Catholic, George Pell had a long list of powerful supporters, another ex-PM, John Howard, among them.
Allow the justice system to take its course. Conviction has been made. He continues to declare his innocence and has lodged an appeal.
Before he even left jail, George Pell issued an 11-paragraph statement. In part, it read, "I have consistently maintained my innocence while suffering from a serious injustice. This has been remedied today with the High Court's unanimous decision. I hold no ill will to my accuser. I do not want my acquittal to add to the hurt and bitterness so many feel. There is certainly hurt and bitterness enough." The Vatican's former treasurer continued, "However, my trial was not a referendum on the Catholic Church, nor a referendum on how church authorities in Australia dealt with the crime of pedophilia in the church. I want to thank in particular my family for their love and support and what they had to go through, my small team of advisors, those who spoke for me and suffered as a result, and all my friends and supporters here and overseas." The dramatic development was welcomed by Australia's senior Catholics.
The court system has gone through that now very thoroughly and has come to the conclusion that it has come to, and I accept that decision.
Melbourne's Archbishop Peter Comensoli.
My own sense was that I had an understanding of the man, and my knowledge of him was when he said he was innocent, I accepted that, but I also accepted the processes of our courts.
I was expecting it. I think most lawyers were.
While the Church welcomed the ruling, the legal world analysed the findings.
The ultimate test is, was there a reasonable doubt, just to put it in very plain, simple English, and if there was, then you can't have a conviction.
David Barron has represented both the Catholic Church and some of its victims. He says Cardinal Pell's lawyers exposed gaps in the prosecution case.
Which has nothing whatsoever to do with the integrity of the victim. But basically, there are a number of strands in the cable that have to be put together to create a very solid rope to then secure a conviction. And they just weren't there.
Here's how the Church was dragged through a sex abuse quagmire. In 2014, Cardinal Pell first fronted the Royal Commission into institutional child sexual abuse. 2 years later, he appeared again via video link from Rome and was quizzed over allegations of abuse in the Ballarat Archdiocese.
Did you in any way cover up offending?
No, never.
Later that year, detectives flew to the Vatican to question him over allegations made by 2 former students. In 2017, the Cardinal was charged with multiple historical sex offences, allegations he denied.
I'm looking forward, finally, to having my day in court. I'm innocent of these charges. They are false.
By the end of 2018, Pell was found guilty on 5 charges of serious sexual misconduct, and the Pope dropped him from his inner circle.
In my view, your conduct was permeated by staggering arrogance.
Within months, the Cardinal was sentenced to 6 years jail. In August last year, the 78-year-old lost an appeal.
The court has decided by a 2-to-1 majority to dismiss George Pell's application for his appeal.
But today that decision was overturned, the High Court finding there was insufficient evidence, and Pell was acquitted of all charges. This afternoon, the father of one of the men who claimed Pell abused him and later committed suicide issued a statement through his lawyers.
Our client is currently in shock, struggling to comprehend the decision. He says he no longer has faith in our country's criminal judicial system. He is furious the man he believes is responsible for sexually abusing his son was convicted by a unanimous jury, only to have that decision overturned today, allowing George Pell to walk free from jail.
He's a free man, and this is it.
The High Court ruling does legally clear the way for the Child Abuse Royal Commission to release previously redacted findings into how church leaders handled the abuse allegations.
The sooner that gets unredacted in the Royal Commission report, we'll see what's going on. You just don't know how far the Catholics' tentacles go.
While today's decision will reverberate around the Catholic world, the question begs, where to now for 78-year-old George Pell? Tonight, it's Melbourne's Carmelite Monastery, where we got a hint there may be a glass or two of sacrificial wine.
George Pell is in here, the former Cardinal who got released from prison today.
Well, Christopher Lamb is the Rome correspondent for Catholic journal The Tablet, but he and his family have returned home to London because of Italy's COVID-19 outbreak. So I spoke to him from there a short time ago. Christopher, thanks for your time. How will the Vatican react to today's decision? Will George Pell be welcomed back?
Well, I think it's too soon to say that. I think the Vatican will be quite relieved in some respects that this decision has been taken. Of course, many in Rome felt that the Cardinal was innocent, or they had doubts about the earlier convictions. They believed George Pell's account that he was innocent. But I think it's too soon to say what will happen in terms of whether the Cardinal will come back to Rome. What I do think is going to now have to be looked at is the church inquiry into these allegations. Pope Francis opened an investigation into the allegations made against the Cardinal. That will have to take place. And so I think that an easy return to the Vatican, I would say at this point, looks very unlikely.
How will that investigation proceed? How does that work, Christopher?
Well, the church trial has to follow certain procedures. It looks to gather evidence, it assesses that evidence. It's a behind closed doors procedure. Of course, the Cardinal will be allowed to have his legal representation. It's what's known as a canonical trial. Now, it may not get to a trial. It may only get to the kind of first investigation stage. It's not clear yet. But I also say that there might be, within the Church in Australia, a decision that has to be taken around the Cardinal's future ministry vis-a-vis the allegations.
Will the Vatican investigation be influenced by today's High Court finding?
Well, obviously they will look at that, take that into account. How this works is that whenever a priest or individual is convicted by a civil court, the church inquiry always waits for that to finish, and often it does use the work and findings, investigations of those civil procedures in its own work.
We are told that some accusers here will pursue civil proceedings against George Pell. Will that impact the Vatican process?
I think less so. I mean, what the canonical inquiry will do is look at the substance of the allegations against the Cardinal and make a decision about whether or not there should be any sanctions against him.
Will the Pope make a statement?
Well, it's too soon to say. I think we can expect the Vatican to make some kind of statement later on today. The Pope prayed during his early morning mass today for those who've suffered unjust sentences, prisoners who've suffered unjust sentences. I don't expect him to make a personal intervention on this, but I think the Vatican will make some kind of statement to explain the next steps.
Okay, thanks very much, Christopher. We'll leave it there.
Thank you.